Explore the harmony of health and holiness through a Catholic lens. Discover how faith rooted in tradition fosters vibrant living. This podcast rebroadcasts the weekly Becoming Gift segment on Morning Offering on Ave Maria Radio. You can check out the Physically Spiritual podcast from Awakened Catholic for my long-form discussions and presentations, or you can find my Substack at becominggift.com. This is your host, Andrew Reinhardt.
Today I wanted to talk about progress and the Pareto Principle. One of the most common lies that people struggle with when they're looking at growing in health or wellness or overcoming something in their life is they say things like, I don't have enough time, right? I've got my family, I've got my job, I've got all these things to do, and they feel like they just don't have really their most limited and precious resource, their time, to overcome whatever they're struggling with. One of the greatest tools and realizations that I have realized in my journey was understanding this thing called the Pareto Principle. This principle came from is an Italian sociologist and economist named Vilfredo Pareto, who wrote at the beginning of the 20th century. And what he noticed was that in the Kingdom of Italy, 80% of the property was owned by 20% of the population. So this is sometimes called the 80-20 rule, or the essential idea is that some small percentage of any given thing leads to 80% of the results, or some high percentage of the results. Another way, if you flip this principle on its head, is sort of the rule of diminishing returns. So you might think of the more you work in one single area, the more you sort of start driving toward a limit where the amount of progress you make will diminish little by little by little by little. So when I realized this principle in my own life, what it helped me to do was to apply this principle in such a way to realize that if I did sort of the 20% most important things in each area, I could end up getting 80% of the results, right? So instead of maybe working out 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a week, maybe I could figure out a way to work out 10 or 15 minutes a couple times a week and get maybe 75% of the results that I would have if I would have been living in the gym. Or maybe there's a way that I can, apply a few kind of key essential principles in my diet, and that can help to manage or regulate my weight. And I don't need to, live some really precise, rigorous diet lifestyle. But just by applying a few simple ideas, I might be able to get pretty good results. These principles, what I realize is there's certain things in the realm of health and wellness that you might think of them as big levers, right? Things that can cause big movement, big shifts, big changes in your life. And there's other things in kind of the health and wellness space that are more on the periphery, more like medium-sized levers or little small levers. And when you're kind of digging into the space and learning about it and listening to podcasters or lectures or reading books, sometimes the people you're learning from don't help you distinguish, what are those big levers? What are those things that you can push and pull on in your life that will get big changes versus what are the more minor levers that, while might be helpful, might make a little bit of a difference, probably isn't going to change the big picture. So here are the 4 big levers that I've discovered for myself and that I often share with other people. The first one is relationship. You can push it toward connecting with other people or pull it toward solitude. Solitude is a state of being connected with God and connected with yourself. So even solitude is kind of a relational state. It's not a being alone, it's being with yourself and God versus connection, friendship. This piece of relationship is really, I think, underappreciated in the health and wellness space. One of the things that's interesting is they've done a lot of research into, they call them blue zones. They're areas where people have, unexpectedly high lifespans, and they sort of look at these people's lifestyles, and one of the most common factors they find in these blue zones is that these people are very relationally connected. They spend a lot of time with friends. They're not in a rush just to do the next thing, but they maybe take a long dinner or live close to people they really care about. So our first big lever is relationship and connection. The second big lever is nourishment, eating and fasting. What we're eating and what we're fasting. Eating and fasting is probably the biggest factor that determines how heavy we are, how much we weigh. There's an old adage that we can't outrun a bad diet. You can't outrun a bad diet. So this is another big lever. Another big lever is movement, exercise versus rest. You push it towards exercise, things like walking, lifting weights, doing cardio, things of that nature. But on the other hand, if you pull that movement lever toward rest, you have to sleep well, we have to know how to Sabbath, and we have to know how to rest and let our body heal. And then the final big lever, is labor. Labor. This is the foundational command that God gave to Adam and Eve, to grow and to till the garden. So in this, on the one hand, we have, if you push the lever, you have, I think, really meaning and purpose, right? The sense that I'm accomplishing something in the world. And when you pull the lever, you have to face, how do I face difficulty and challenge, right? How do I manage stress? So in this realm are things like creativity, productivity, facing challenge, and growth. So these 4 domains, relationship, nourishment, movement, and labor, I think are the big levers in our life. And then, there's a lot of small levers that people talk about, things like the sauna or essential oils or supplements or, all these other things that people, I think, can focus on in the health and wellness space. Well, they could be good or bad. And of course, before making any change, we should always consult with our doctor or another, professional in that realm. These things probably aren't going to make a massive difference in our life. But these big domains like relationship, nourishment, movement, and labor are going to make big changes in our life if we make and focus on the right principles in those areas. So for the next few weeks, I actually want to dig into each one of these 4 principles and kind of apply this Pareto principle and help kind of identify what's the 20% that will get us 80% of the results.
Thank you for listening to Becoming Gift. You can catch the show live every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Eastern on Ave Maria Radio. You can also find my long-form podcasts, discussions, and presentations on the Physically Spiritual podcast. Subscribe to my Substack at becominggift.com to find more from me, and don't forget to like and subscribe.